Hey guys, today we step straight into the inner storm that drives so many of your choices. The invisible tide pulling you toward actions that feel good in the moment, but leave you questioning yourself later. You're walking through your day, confident, composed, almost certain you're steering life with a steady hand. Then suddenly you lash out at someone you love, or buy something you don't need, or commit to something you regret the instant the words leave your mouth. It happens in a flash, and afterward you shake your head. Why did I do that? That's where our journey begins. We are diving into the law of irrationality, not as a cold theory in a book, but as a living truth you encounter every day. You like to believe you are a rational creature. You plan, weigh options, make lists, and pride yourself on sound judgment. Yet beneath that polished surface lies a restless sea of emotions that often overrules the careful logic you try to apply. Think back to the last heated argument you had. Your mind wasn't calmly calculating pros and cons. It was inflamed, reacting, seeking defense or victory. That is irrationality at work. And the first step to mastering it is acknowledging its constant presence. This doesn't mean emotions are the enemy. On the contrary, emotions are the fire that gives color to your experiences. They inspire love, courage, creativity. But the same fire can scorch you when left unchecked. Irrationality shows up not because you are weak, but because you are human. Every one of us carries layers of ancient instincts, unconscious fears, and fragile egos. The challenge is not to eradicate them, you never will, but to manage and direct them so they serve you instead of sabotage you. Pause for a second and notice how often decisions in your life are made under pressure. Think about that time you were scrolling on your phone late at night and clicked "Buy now" on something you barely needed. The pull wasn't reason. It was a surge of temporary desire, a craving for comfort, status, or distraction. Later, you justified it, telling yourself it was a good deal. But deep down, you knew. The decision was emotional. Awareness is the thin line separating self-mastery from self-deception. You can almost feel irrationality as a physical sensation. Your heart beats faster, your breath shortens, your thoughts scatter. The body is alert, ready to fight, to flee, or to indulge. It feels urgent. You must respond now. But the very urgency is the trap. Irrationality thrives when you collapse time, when you assume that if you don't act immediately, disaster will follow. In truth, the opposite is often the case. Slowing down, even for a single breath, can break the spell. Imagine you are in traffic. Another driver cuts you off, and rage erupts inside you. In that fiery second, you want to chase, to shout, to prove you will not be disrespected. If you follow that impulse, you risk escalation, maybe even danger. Yet if you pause, just breathe, you see the other driver disappear into the distance and realize your peace of mind matters more than revenge. That's irrationality, confronted and diffused. This is not easy work. It demands you become a keen observer of yourself. Start asking simple questions in the moment. Am I deciding from emotion or reason? Am I reacting to an old wound being touched? Am I protecting my ego rather than seeking truth? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are tools, quick lanterns to shine light on the shadows of the mind. Consider history for a moment. Leaders, generals, even entire nations have been toppled, not by external enemies, but by irrational impulses, pride, envy, fear. A conqueror who overextends because he craves glory ends up exiled. A ruler who lashes out at criticism alienates allies. The pattern repeats endlessly. The lesson for you: no matter how intelligent, educated, or successful you are, irrationality waits patiently to pull you down if you ignore it. So how do you strengthen your defenses? First, cultivate the art of distance. This doesn't mean detachment from life, but creating a small gap between stimulus and response. Someone insults you? Step back mentally before answering. You receive bad news? Breathe before reacting. In that gap lies freedom, the freedom to choose a wiser course. Second, practice seeking perspective. When your mind is clouded by anger or excitement, borrow another lens. Call a friend who isn't entangled in your emotions. Ask how they see the situation. Sometimes an outside view is enough to break your tunnel vision and return balance. Third, train patience. Irrationality feeds on urgency. Patience starves it. Delay major decisions until emotions cool. Let the impulse settle. If it is truly right, it will still be right tomorrow. If it was purely emotional, tomorrow will reveal its emptiness. And remember, rationality is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about harmony between mind and heart. Your emotions contain wisdom. They point to your values, your fears, your desires, but they must be integrated with reason to serve your highest goals. Think of emotions as wild horses, powerful, beautiful, but in need of a skilled rider. Without control, they trample your path. With guidance, they carry you further than logic alone ever could. Here's a practical exercise. The next time you feel an impulse rising, anger, envy, sudden desire, don't suppress it. Instead, label it. Say quietly to yourself, "This is anger. This is fear. This is craving." Naming the emotion creates space. It reminds you that you are not the emotion. You are the observer of it. From that position, you can decide whether to let it guide you or gently set it aside. Think of all the regrets in your life. How many began with a snap decision, a word spoken too quickly, a choice made without reflection? Now imagine the alternate reality where you had paused, recognized the surge of emotion, and chosen differently. That version of you still exists, waiting in the present moment every time you choose awareness. As you continue through this journey of human nature, keep this truth close. Irrationality never disappears, but it can be transformed. When you catch yourself mid-impulse and redirect, you turn potential chaos into growth. You turn fire into light. From here, the path unfolds naturally. Understanding irrationality is not just about avoiding mistakes. It is the foundation of wisdom. Because once you see how emotions cloud your judgment, you begin to see how they cloud the judgment of others. That insight allows you to move through relationships, workplaces, and conflicts with clarity. You become less reactive, more strategic, more compassionate. And slowly, people start to feel it. They sense the calm in your presence, the steadiness in your choices. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if, instead of being ruled by sudden impulses, you became the master of them? What would change if every decision passed through the filter of awareness before action? Imagine the relationships that would heal, the money you would save, the opportunities you would seize. That is the promise of mastering irrationality, not perfection, but progress toward a life steered by clarity instead of chaos. So as we move forward, hold this practice close. Notice the flare of emotion. Pause before you leap, invite perspective, and choose with intention. This single law, awareness of irrationality, can ripple through every area of your life, shaping a future defined not by regret, but by wisdom. You carry a mirror inside you. Every glance, every conversation, every like on a screen reflects back an image you hold of yourself. That image is fragile, and because it is fragile, you protect it fiercely. This is where the pull of narcissism enters. You might think narcissism belongs only to those extreme personalities, loud, vain, constantly craving attention. But the truth is subtler. You, me, everyone carries some degree of it, because every human being longs to be seen, valued, and affirmed. The difference is in how far we let that need control us. Picture yourself as a child, reaching for recognition. Maybe your achievements earned you applause, or maybe you felt overlooked, invisible, unworthy. Those early experiences built patterns. If you were overindulged, you might grow accustomed to constant praise, expecting the world to echo your parents' voices. If you were neglected, you might develop an endless hunger for validation, chasing it in every relationship, every career milestone. Either way, the seed of narcissism was planted. Now, fast forward to adulthood. You scroll through social media and feel the tiny electric thrill when someone comments on your photo. You tell a story at dinner and watch faces light up with admiration. These are small doses of fuel, and the mind learns to crave them like sugar. But just as sugar leaves you hungrier than before, so too does attention fail to satisfy for long. You chase more, subtly bending yourself into whatever shape will bring that sweet reflection back. This is the mirror effect in action. You see yourself only through the eyes of others. Compliments inflate you, criticism deflates you, silence terrifies you. And while everyone wants to be liked, if your sense of worth hangs entirely on external feedback, you become a prisoner of other people's reactions. Notice this the next time you feel hurt by a friend's blunt remark, or defensive when a colleague challenges your idea. Often the wound isn't about the truth of their words, but about the crack they create in your self-image. Narcissism whispers, protect yourself at all costs, prove them wrong, make them admire you again. But responding that way traps you in endless battles that drain your energy and erode relationships. The pull of narcissism doesn't just show up in weakness. It often hides inside strength, confidence, ambition, charm. These can be genuine, or they can be armor. Some people learn to dazzle others as a way to guarantee admiration. They perform constantly, smiling brightly, telling captivating stories, never letting the mask slip. Yet behind that glow lies fear. The fear that without the performance, they will vanish into irrelevance. Others express narcissism in quieter ways. The passive-aggressive coworker who sabotages a project just enough to feel superior. The friend who always finds a way to twist conversations back to themselves. The partner who needs endless reassurance disguised as playful teasing. Each is a variation on the same theme. See me, affirm me, keep me from feeling small. But narcissism is not only destructive. At healthy levels, it gives you self-respect, the drive to present yourself well, the courage to pursue goals. You need some self-love to thrive. The key is balance. Too little, and you shrink into self-doubt. Too much, and you trample others. Here's a practice worth trying. Next time you feel stung by criticism, pause and ask, is this pain about the truth of what was said, or about the image of myself I want to preserve? This question cracks open the mirror, showing you the difference between ego protection and genuine growth. Sometimes the criticism is unfair, and awareness helps you dismiss it. Other times, there is wisdom hidden inside the sting, and humility allows you to accept it. To manage narcissism in others, you must become a student of their reflections. Observe how they respond to admiration, how they bristle at perceived slights. Rather than confronting them head-on, which only fuels their defensiveness, you can navigate strategically. A small acknowledgement of their strengths can soften their armor, making them more open to listening. Set boundaries firmly, but without cruelty. You're protecting your energy, not declaring war. Consider a workplace example. A boss constantly fishing for praise might overwhelm the team with demands. You could respond with resentment, or you could redirect the dynamic. Offer specific recognition when it's genuine. Then gently introduce your own ideas once their ego feels secure. It isn't manipulation, it's emotional intelligence. You're reducing friction, so collaboration can happen. In personal relationships, the stakes are higher. Living with someone deeply narcissistic can drain you. Here, boundaries are your lifeline. Know what you will and will not tolerate. Resist the temptation to fix them. It is not your job to heal wounds they refuse to face. Instead, protect your sense of self by nurturing empathy and authenticity within yourself. And let's not forget, narcissism is contagious. Spend too much time with someone who constantly demands admiration, and you start measuring your own worth through the same lens. You find yourself comparing, competing, performing. The antidote is to cultivate purpose beyond appearances. Ask, what matters to me when no one is watching? What would I pursue if likes, applause, or recognition didn't exist? When you begin to answer honestly, you reclaim power from the mirror. You discover that your reflection is not only what others see, but what you choose to embody. Self-worth shifts from something fragile to something rooted. Remember, narcissism thrives in secrecy. By admitting your own tendencies, by catching yourself when you grow defensive, you loosen its grip. It's not about eliminating self-focus. You will always want to be seen. It's about transforming it into something healthy. Confidence anchored in empathy. Ambition guided by contribution. Charm that doesn't hide fear, but radiates authenticity. So here's the challenge. Over the next week, watch your reactions. Notice when you feel invisible, when you crave attention, when you rush to defend your image. Treat these moments not as failures, but as invitations. Each is a chance to step out of the mirror and into reality. Because once you begin to manage your narcissism, instead of letting it manage you, relationships shift. People feel safer around you, less manipulated, more valued. You no longer waste energy proving yourself. You live from a place of quiet strength. And the irony is, when you stop chasing admiration, true respect and connection often flow to you naturally. You step into every room wearing a mask, even when you don't realize it. You adjust your posture, your tone, your words, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, depending on who stands in front of you. Around friends, you might be playful and loose. At work, you sharpen your voice and project competence. With family, you might slip into old roles you thought you outgrew. These shifts feel natural, almost invisible, yet they reveal one of the deepest truths of human nature. You are always performing. This isn't deception. Role-playing is a survival skill built into your very being. From the moment you were a child, learning how to fit in, whether by pleasing parents, charming teachers, or copying peers, you discovered that adapting your behavior gained you acceptance and safety. And so, like an actor rehearsing lines, you refined certain roles until they became second skin. But here lies the paradox. While role-playing makes you adaptable, it can also trap you. If the mask grows too rigid, you lose touch with the person underneath. You might find yourself exhausted, unsure of who you really are when the stage lights dim. The danger is not in wearing masks, but in forgetting they are masks at all. Think about the colleague who acts overly cheerful in every meeting, even when pressure is high. At first, the mask inspires positivity, but eventually, people sense the mismatch. The cheerfulness feels forced, insincere. Trust erodes. Or picture the person who constantly plays the role of the victim, always seeking sympathy, never taking responsibility. The mask draws attention, but it also repels those who grow weary of the act. Your challenge is to recognize the roles you play and bring awareness into them. When you know you are performing, you gain freedom to adapt authentically rather than mechanically. Self-awareness transforms role-playing from manipulation into mastery. Imagine yourself at a job interview. Of course, you present the best version of yourself. You highlight strengths, downplay weaknesses, choose words carefully. Without some performance, you'd appear careless or unprepared. But if the performance drifts too far from truth, if you claim to be passionate about tasks you secretly despise, you set a trap for yourself. The mask wins the role, but the real you suffers once the act becomes daily life. Now consider your personal relationships. How often do you hide vulnerability behind humor? How often do you nod along to avoid conflict even when your heart disagrees? These are roles, too. They maintain harmony in the moment, but if repeated without honesty, they build walls between you and intimacy. The key is integration. Don't throw away your masks. Use them, but weave threads of authenticity into each one. When you speak with authority, let genuine humility peek through. When you lighten the mood with humor, allow moments of sincerity to anchor trust. When you seek approval, let your real values guide the performance. This is not about stripping roles away. It's about blending them with truth until they strengthen, rather than suffocate, your identity. To master this, become a careful observer. Watch others and study the masks they wear. Notice the teacher who slips into the role of a strict disciplinarian, then softens into a mentor when no one is looking. Notice the leader who plays the visionary at public events, but privately wrestles with doubt. The more you observe, the more you realize roles are everywhere, and authenticity often lies not in abandoning performance, but in choosing it consciously. One practical exercise. At the end of each day, reflect on the roles you played. Ask yourself, which felt aligned with my true self? Which drained me? By naming the roles, you reduce their unconscious power. You reclaim choice. Slowly, you begin to design your performances rather than being trapped by them. This awareness also sharpens your influence. People trust those whose roles feel congruent with reality. When your actions align with your essence, others sense sincerity, even if they cannot name it. The politician who connects because their words match their character. The leader who inspires loyalty because their authority is blended with authenticity. The friend who makes you feel safe because their humor hides no malice. But beware the opposite, insincere role-playing. The person who constantly exaggerates achievements to impress may fool some at first, but eventually cracks appear. Audiences sense dishonesty. Reputation weakens. Once trust is broken, even genuine gestures are doubted. This is the heavy price of masks worn without awareness. You can also use role-playing strategically. If you face someone defensive, soften into a role of listener rather than challenger. If you need to motivate a group, lean into the role of inspirer, amplifying energy even if you feel tired inside. These roles don't mean you are fake. They mean you are flexible, able to meet the moment with the version of yourself that will best serve the situation. There is deep liberation in realizing you contain multitudes. You are not one identity fixed forever. You can be both serious and playful, both leader and follower, both strong and tender. Recognizing this allows you to expand rather than contract. The danger only comes when you lock yourself into one mask and mistake it for the whole truth. Consider this image. Life is a grand stage, but not a prison. You are the actor, yes, but also the director. The play changes, the costumes shift, the audience rotates, but the core remains, you, the one behind every role. So as you move forward, keep playing, but play consciously. Let your masks serve connection, not hide you from it. Let your roles expand your capacity, not reduce you to a script written long ago. And above all, remember, the world doesn't need a flawless performance. It needs your truth woven into every part you play. There are patterns etched into your days that you barely notice. You wake, you move through routines, you reach for the same comforts, react with the same frustrations, repeat familiar cycles, almost as if scripted. Some of these patterns serve you, brushing your teeth, showing up on time, tending to responsibilities, but others drain you without mercy. These are compulsions, the repetitive behaviors rooted so deeply in your past that they rise up almost automatically, steering your life even when you believe you're choosing freely. Think about the person who always needs to check their phone the moment silence falls, unable to sit with stillness. Or the one who polishes every detail of a project, long past the point of usefulness, driven by a fear of imperfection. Maybe you know someone who clings to control so tightly that every shift in plans feels like disaster. These compulsions don't announce themselves as grand crises. They creep in quietly, shaping your decisions, straining your relationships, and carving ruts into your potential. Where do they come from? Often, childhood. A child who felt unsafe might grow into an adult obsessed with control, because certainty once meant survival. A child who felt invisible might compulsively seek approval, replaying the hope of finally being noticed. Another who endured chaos might cling to routines with near religious devotion. Each compulsion begins as a coping mechanism, a strategy to protect the tender self. But over time, what once kept you safe can become a cage. The tragedy of compulsion is not just repetition, it is blindness. You don't see the strings pulling you, because they feel like part of your personality. You might even defend them. I'm just a perfectionist. I like things my way. I can't relax until everything is perfect. These phrases sound harmless, but beneath them often lies fear. Fear of failure, of rejection, of losing control. Let's explore a few common compulsions. First, the need for control. You recognize it when every small change unsettles you, when you struggle to delegate because you fear others won't meet your standard. On the surface, it looks like responsibility, but deep down, it is anxiety disguised as diligence. Control gives a fleeting sense of security, but it also shrinks your world because you cannot bend reality forever. Then there is perfectionism. You work tirelessly, chasing flawlessness that never arrives. Perfection feels noble, but it drains life. It makes you delay progress, miss opportunities, burn yourself out. Perfectionism whispers that anything less than flawless is failure. But in truth, it is progress, not perfection, that carries you forward. Approval seeking is another. You catch yourself tailoring every opinion, every action, to avoid disapproval. You overextend, agree to things you don't want, smile when you feel weary, all to keep others happy. It may win you temporary peace, but it erodes authenticity. You end up surrounded by relationships that know your mask, but not your soul. And then there are addictive behaviors: shopping, gambling, scrolling, substances, compulsions that soothe in the moment, but leave emptiness afterward. Each one is a bandage on an older wound, a way to avoid pain rather than heal it. So what can you do? First, awareness. Begin noticing your repetitive behaviors, especially those that bring more stress than relief. Ask, why do I keep doing this? What need am I trying to meet? At first, you may not know. That's fine. Simply asking plants the seed. Second, mindfulness. When you catch yourself in the middle of a compulsion, checking your phone for the 10th time in an hour, editing a sentence long after it is clear, pause. Feel the urge without obeying it. Breathe into the discomfort. By resisting even briefly, you weaken the chain. Over time, those pauses create space for new choices. Third, substitution. It's not enough to stop a compulsion. You must replace it. The approval seeker can learn to practice honesty, gently at first, speaking truths even when they risk disapproval. The perfectionist can train themselves to deliver good enough and watch as the world does not collapse. The control addict can experiment with letting others lead, discovering that chaos does not always spell disaster. Sometimes, professional help is necessary. Deep compulsions tied to trauma may require therapy to unravel. And that's no weakness, it's wisdom. Seeking guidance is not surrender. It is taking back authorship of your story. But even without professional support, you can start small. Keep a journal. Track moments you feel driven by an urge you cannot explain. Ask what fear might be beneath it. Over time, patterns will emerge, and the fog of compulsion begins to lift. Here's the liberating truth. Compulsions are not destiny. They are habits, powerful ones. Yes, but still habits. And habits can be reshaped. Every time you pause, reflect, and choose differently, you loosen the grip of the past. You stop replaying old scripts and start writing new ones. Think of it like walking a path through tall grass. The more you tread the same way, the clearer the path becomes. That's compulsion, the brain's well-worn trail. But step off it, even clumsily, even awkwardly, and over time, a new path forms. The old one grows over, the new one strengthens. That is the process of freedom. Slow, deliberate, but real. You are not condemned to repeat the past. You can outgrow the cages built in childhood, soften the patterns that once protected you, but now confine you. Freedom does not arrive in a single grand gesture. It comes in tiny, repeated acts of awareness and courage. So the next time you feel the urge rising, the itch to control, to perfect, to seek approval, stop. Breathe. Remember, this is not you. It is a pattern, and patterns can be changed. You hold the pen. You can choose to write differently. Desire is a restless thing. You see someone with what you lack: status, talent, possessions, recognition, and suddenly your own life feels smaller. That twinge, that pang, is covetousness, the instinct to want what belongs to another. It rises quietly but spreads quickly, shaping choices, breeding envy, and sometimes pushing you into battles that leave scars. You like to imagine you chase goals from pure inspiration, but often the spark ignites from comparison. You see what someone else has, and you want it. Not because it was once your dream, but because their having it makes you feel incomplete. Look closely at the times you've longed for something. Was it truly your desire, or did seeing it in another's hands awaken the craving? Perhaps a colleague bought a sleek car, and suddenly your own feels outdated. A friend's relationship glows on social media, and suddenly you question your own. A peer succeeds publicly, and you feel behind, though nothing in your life has changed. This is the pull of covetousness, and it is woven into human nature. From an evolutionary view, it once served survival. Early humans compared themselves constantly. Who had more food, safer shelter, stronger allies, because falling behind meant risk. But in today's world, comparison rarely saves your life. It often poisons it. What once motivated has become corrosive. Envy, the cousin of covetousness, appears when you not only desire, but resent. You don't just want their success. You feel bitterness that it is theirs, left unchecked. Envy turns relationships into rivalries and leaves you restless even when you achieve your own goals. Because no matter what you gain, someone always has more. Possessiveness is another branch. You fear losing what you already have, guarding it so tightly that joy vanishes. A partner becomes less a person to love and more a possession to keep. Success becomes something to protect obsessively instead of celebrate. In this way, desire can transform victories into prisons. Then there is greed, the endless hunger that swallows satisfaction. Greed is not simply wanting more, it is never finding enough. You climb one peak only to fixate on the next. The horizon keeps retreating, and fulfillment always seems one step out of reach. But desire isn't purely destructive. Covetousness can fuel ambition, spark innovation, push you to grow. The problem comes when you pursue blindly, without reflection, chasing shadows instead of purpose. Desire becomes destructive when it owns you rather than serves you. So what can you do? The first step is recognition. The moment envy flares, name it. This is envy. This is desire. Naming reduces its grip. You step back from the rush and see it for what it is, a passing state, not your identity. Second, gratitude. Shift your focus to what you already have. Gratitude doesn't mean complacency. It means rooting ambition in abundance rather than lack. Instead of, I'll never measure up, it becomes, I already have much, and I can still grow. Gratitude starves envy and strengthens joy. Third, redefine success. If your definition depends on others, more money than them, more recognition than them, you will never rest. But if you define success by internal markers, progress, authenticity, contribution, you regain control. No one else's life can dictate your worth. Fourth, empathy. When you envy someone, try imagining their hidden struggles. The perfect couple online might be quietly falling apart. The wealthy colleague might wrestle with loneliness. Remembering that everyone carries unseen battles softens envy into compassion. Now, think of the times desire pushed you forward positively. You admired a mentor's skill, not with resentment, but with inspiration, and it motivated you to practice harder. That's envy, transformed into admiration. The key is where you direct the energy. Do you waste it in bitterness, Or do you channel it into growth? History is littered with examples of covetousness gone wrong. Wars waged for land, alliances broken for power, friendships destroyed for status. But there are also stories of ambition, sparked by healthy desire. Inventors who looked at others' achievements and said, "I can build something better." Artists who saw brilliance and thought, "I can add my voice." The same human instinct, pointed in a different direction, creates radically different outcomes. Here's a simple practice. Each time you notice yourself wanting what someone else has, ask 3 questions. 1. Do I truly want this? Or do I want the feeling of not being left behind? 2. If I gained it, would it bring lasting fulfillment or only temporary relief? 3. How can I channel this desire into something that builds me rather than corrodes me? These questions turn raw envy into raw material for growth. Consider this. The most liberating form of wealth is not having everything, but needing less. When you feel satisfied with who you are and what you've built, desire becomes fuel, not fire. You can admire others without resenting them, strive without obsessing, and celebrate progress without comparison. You will never eliminate desire. It is part of being human, but you can train it. You can make it serve your values instead of enslaving you to endless craving. The choice is subtle, moment to moment, but it reshapes your life. So the next time envy stirs in your chest, pause. Instead of reaching, grasping, resenting, try shifting. Turn envy into admiration. Turn covetousness into creativity. Use the spark not to burn your peace, but to light a path forward. That is the art of desire transformed, from restless hunger into purposeful fire. You are wired to chase what feels good now. That slice of cake, that quick purchase, that decision to scroll instead of working on your dream. It all feels harmless in the moment. Yet every one of those choices builds the architecture of your future. This is the trap of short-sightedness, the tendency to cling to immediate gratification while ignoring long-term consequences. You tell yourself you'll make up for it tomorrow. Yet tomorrow becomes another today. And slowly the future you wanted slips further away. Why does this happen? Deep in your biology, you carry the instincts of ancestors who lived moment to moment. For them, focusing on immediate survival, food, shelter, safety, was wise. Long-term planning held little value when danger lurked daily. But in the modern world, survival is no longer the only measure. The people who thrive are those who can delay gratification, who can sacrifice a little comfort now for the sake of growth later. Still, the old wiring remains, and it whispers in your ear whenever temptation appears. Look around. Short-sightedness shows up everywhere. A student crams the night before instead of steadily learning, chasing the comfort of procrastination. A leader makes a hasty decision to score popularity points without considering the lasting cost. A worker jumps at a small raise instead of building skills that could multiply their future value. Each of these choices offers a sweet taste in the present, but bitterness later. Sometimes short-sightedness disguises itself as urgency. You tell yourself, "I must act now." Yet often that urgency is manufactured by fear or desire, not necessity. Think of the investor who sells in a panic when markets dip, losing long-term gains because the present storm feels unbearable. Or the person who abandons a promising path after the first setback, unable to see the larger picture of growth through persistence. The price of short-sightedness is heavy. Broken plans, wasted effort, relationships strained, health neglected. You can almost trace regret backward to these impulsive choices. What you skipped, avoided, or rushed yesterday becomes the obstacle you face today. But awareness changes everything. Start by noticing your time horizon. When making a choice, ask, am I focused only on the next few minutes, or am I considering the next few years? This simple question shifts perspective. Suddenly, you see the ripple effects of your actions. Patience becomes your ally. Train yourself to sit with discomfort now in order to harvest reward later. The gym session feels tiring, but the long-term strength it builds is priceless. The money saved feels like sacrifice, but the security it creates frees you in the future. Each small act of patience compounds into a life of stability and opportunity. Big picture thinking also protects you. Step back often to look at the broader context of your life. Where are your decisions leading you in 5 years? 10. When you zoom out, impulsive desires shrink. The fight with a colleague, the craving for instant success, the lure of shortcuts, suddenly they appear trivial compared to the legacy you want to build. History illustrates the cost of short-sightedness vividly. Napoleon's impatience to conquer further, rather than consolidating his empire, led to ruin. Leaders who sought immediate glory often planted seeds of downfall. Yet those who endured short-term struggle for long-term vision, builders, innovators, reformers, left marks that outlived them. You don't need to be a historical figure to see this play out. Think about your own life. When have you regretted quick comfort? When have you been grateful for holding out? The answers remind you that every moment presents a choice between the easy now and the fulfilling later. So how do you train long-term vision? One strategy is setting clear goals. When you know what you want in 5 years, today's temptations lose some power. Each decision becomes a test. Does this bring me closer or farther? Another strategy is breaking goals into small steps. Long-term visions often feel overwhelming, but when divided into daily actions, they become achievable. Flexibility is crucial too. Short-sightedness often comes from panic when plans change. If you cultivate adaptability, you won't be derailed by temporary setbacks. Instead, you'll adjust while keeping the long view intact. Think of it as sailing. Storms may push you off course, but with flexibility, you keep steering toward your destination. Here's a practice. Before major decisions, write down the short-term benefits and the long-term consequences. Compare them side by side. Sometimes you'll still choose the short-term option, and that's fine if it's conscious. The danger is choosing blindly. Clarity itself is power. The truth is, life constantly tempts you to trade the future for the present. But every act of patience, every choice for vision, strengthens your ability to resist. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. So the next time you feel pulled toward the easy now, pause. Picture the future you dream of. Ask yourself which version of you will thank you more, the one enjoying fleeting comfort today, or the one reaping the reward years from now. That vision is enough to turn short-sightedness into foresight and impulse into wisdom. Defensiveness creeps in like armor you don't even realize you're putting on. Someone questions your idea, and before they finish speaking, you feel the heat in your chest. Someone offers feedback, and you immediately line up counter-arguments in your mind. You hear not words but threats, not suggestions but attacks. That instinct to guard yourself is universal. It's the law of defensiveness. Yet the very armor that feels protective often blocks connection, learning, and growth. Think of how many conversations break down not because the issue was impossible to solve, but because one or both people felt attacked. A simple remark, "Maybe there's another way to do this," is heard as, "You're wrong. You're not good enough." The moment defensiveness appears, listening stops. And when listening stops, bridges collapse. At its core, defensiveness is about fear. Fear of being exposed, of looking foolish, of losing value in someone else's eyes. Your ego rushes to the front lines, convinced it must fight for survival. But the ego exaggerates the threat. Most feedback, most disagreements are not mortal dangers. They are opportunities. The problem is that fear distorts them into weapons. You can spot defensiveness in yourself by watching your body. Do you cross your arms, raise your voice, feel tension in your jaw? Do you interrupt, explain too much, or quickly shift blame? These are signals that your ego has taken control. In others, defensiveness shows in the same ways: sudden changes in tone, denial, rationalization, or even aggression. The tragedy is that defensiveness usually hides the very vulnerability that could build trust if revealed. Imagine admitting, "That feedback stings because I worked hard on this," instead of pushing others away. Such honesty draws them closer. Yet in the moment, the instinct is to protect rather than reveal. How do you manage it? Start with awareness. When you feel that surge of resistance, don't act on it immediately. Take a breath. Notice the urge to defend. Naming it, "I'm feeling defensive," creates space between the trigger and your response. In that space lies freedom. Second, reframe criticism. Instead of hearing, "You failed," train yourself to hear, "Here's a chance to grow." This isn't easy, especially when feedback is delivered harshly, but even poorly delivered feedback can contain a seed of truth. Extract the useful part, discard the sting, and you gain wisdom without swallowing poison. Third, cultivate empathy. Ask yourself, why is this person saying this? What are they trying to achieve? Often their intention isn't to wound, but to help, or at least to express their perspective. By stepping into their shoes, you soften the impact on your own ego. You can also disarm defensiveness in others. Instead of launching into direct criticism, frame your words constructively. "I see how much effort you put in. Here's one thing that might make it even stronger." Show empathy, use gentle language, and focus on the issue rather than the person. Creating a supportive environment reduces the need for armor. Sometimes the wisest move is to retreat strategically. If emotions run too hot, no progress will come from pushing harder. Step back, let the fire cool, and revisit the discussion later. This is not defeat, it's timing. A cooled mind can hear what a heated one cannot. In relationships, defensiveness often becomes a cycle. One partner criticizes, the other defends, the first escalates, and suddenly the original issue is buried under layers of ego warfare. Breaking the cycle requires one person to step out, to say, "I hear you. Let me sit with this." That pause can dissolve the spiral. At work, defensiveness can destroy collaboration. Teams stagnate when members guard their ideas too fiercely to accept input. Leaders who respond defensively to feedback create cultures of silence, where no one dares speak truth. But leaders who welcome feedback, even when it stings, foster environments where innovation thrives. Because when people feel safe to share, creativity flows. Look inward now. Where in your life do you react most defensively? With family? At work? With friends? These are the areas where your ego feels most fragile. That fragility points to wounds, insecurities, or deep values. Exploring those roots is key to loosening defensiveness. For example, if criticism of your work feels unbearable, perhaps your worth is too tightly tied to achievement. If feedback on relationships makes you bristle, perhaps you fear being unloved. Recognizing the deeper fear allows you to address it directly rather than masking it with defensiveness. Here's a practice. Next time you feel defensive, instead of answering immediately, ask a clarifying question. Can you tell me more about what you mean? This shifts the dynamic. You move from defending to exploring, from closing down to opening up. The other person feels heard, and you gain time to regulate your emotions. Remember this: defensiveness is natural, but not inevitable. You cannot stop the initial sting of criticism, but you can choose your response. Each time you pause, breathe, and respond with curiosity instead of combat, you weaken the grip of defensiveness. And when you meet someone else's defensiveness, resist the urge to match it. Meeting armor with armor leads only to collision. Instead, bring openness. Sometimes the softest response dismantles the hardest shield. Think of how your life would shift if you could meet challenges without reflexive resistance. Imagine hearing feedback with calm, disagreements with curiosity, criticism with discernment. Relationships would deepen, work would flourish, inner peace would grow. The law of defensiveness does not vanish. But once you understand it, you can choose not to live inside its walls. Sometimes the greatest battles you fight are not with the world outside, but with the shadows you carry within. You set a goal, but at the very moment success inches closer, something in you begins to resist. You procrastinate. You doubt yourself. You find ways to delay or even sabotage the very thing you've worked for. This is self-sabotage, the strange pattern where you become your own obstacle, quietly unraveling progress because of fears you rarely name. You know this feeling. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. Then tomorrow becomes another promise unkept. You polish a project endlessly, never releasing it, because imperfection feels unbearable. You reach for distractions, numbing yourself with comfort rather than pushing through discomfort that would lead to growth. Outwardly, it looks like laziness or carelessness, but deep inside, it's something heavier, a hidden fear that whispers, what if you fail? What if you succeed and can't handle it? What if you're not enough? Much of self-sabotage traces back to childhood messages. Maybe you absorbed the idea that you weren't worthy of love unless you performed perfectly. Maybe praise felt conditional, so you grew suspicious of success. Maybe failure was mocked so harshly that now you avoid trying at all. These wounds bury themselves, but they don't vanish. They resurface whenever you move toward something meaningful. Look at how it plays out in everyday life. You decide to improve your health, but instead of starting small, you set impossible goals, then give up when you can't maintain them. You dream of a new career, but you stall on applying because your mind invents 1,000 excuses. You want deeper relationships, but you push people away before they can reject you. Each action seems small, but together, they form a pattern of self-defeat. Common forms of self-sabotage include procrastination, indecisiveness, perfectionism, negative self-talk, and addictive behaviors. Procrastination disguises itself as harmless delay, but it drains momentum. Indecisiveness keeps you safe from making mistakes, yet it also keeps you frozen. Perfectionism convinces you to aim high, but it ensures you never feel good enough. Negative self-talk quietly poisons motivation, and addictions, whether to substances, shopping, or endless scrolling, offer escape at the cost of progress. The key to breaking free lies in awareness. Start by noticing your patterns. Ask, where do I consistently trip myself up? What happens right before I derail? Often, you'll find a trigger, stress, fear, or the approach of a milestone. When you spot it, you can interrupt it. One powerful tool is self-compassion. Most self-sabotage grows from harshness toward yourself, from the belief that you must be perfect to be worthy. By practicing kindness instead, reminding yourself that failure is part of growth, you remove the shame that fuels sabotage. Another step is to set realistic goals. Break big dreams into smaller, manageable steps. Celebrate each small win instead of demanding perfection. This builds momentum and rewires your brain to associate progress with reward rather than dread. Reframe your inner voice too. Replace "I can't handle this" with "I'm learning how." Replace "I always mess up" with "Every setback teaches me something." These shifts sound simple, but they change how your mind perceives challenges. Surround yourself with support. Seek friends, mentors, or communities who encourage your growth. Sometimes, a word of belief from someone else is enough to silence the inner saboteur. And don't be afraid to seek professional help if old wounds feel too heavy to confront alone. Above all, embrace resilience. Understand that sabotage is not proof of weakness. It's proof that something inside you is afraid. By meeting that fear directly, with awareness and compassion, you begin to dissolve its hold. Imagine how your life would change if you stopped tripping yourself at the finish line. What projects would you complete? What dreams would you pursue? What relationships would you nurture? Every time you choose awareness over sabotage, you step closer to that life. The law of self-sabotage reminds you that your greatest enemy may live within, but it also reminds you of your greatest power, the ability to rewrite the script. You don't have to repeat the old patterns. You can pause, breathe, and choose differently. And each new choice is a quiet act of liberation. There are parts of yourself you've hidden so deeply that even you forget they exist. Feelings you once decided were too dangerous to show. Desires you feared would draw rejection. Memories that hurt too much to revisit. All pushed down, locked away, buried under layers of busyness and distraction. This is repression, the unconscious habit of shoving emotions out of sight, convincing yourself they are gone, when in truth, they continue to shape you in silence. Think back to childhood. You may have been told not to cry, not to show anger, not to speak up. Maybe affection was withheld unless you acted good. Maybe you learned quickly that certain feelings led to punishment or shame. So, you adapted. You swallowed tears, smiled when you didn't want to, hid your pain, denied your rage. On the surface, you survived. But underneath, those feelings did not disappear. They simply moved underground. Fast forward to adulthood, and repression still runs the show. The anxiety you can't explain, the sudden anger that feels disproportionate, the mysterious fatigue or headaches. Often these are the echoes of emotions you buried long ago. They don't vanish just because you refuse to acknowledge them. They leak out sideways, shaping your choices and relationships in ways you barely see. Picture someone who constantly explodes over small frustrations. The true anger isn't about the spilled coffee or the traffic jam. It's old resentment, repressed for years, now bubbling up at safe but misplaced targets. or consider the person who sabotages opportunities, not because they're lazy, but because deep down, they've repressed feelings of unworthiness, or the one who projects criticism onto others, harshly judging friends for traits they secretly fear in themselves. All of these are repression playing out in disguise. The cost is steep. Repressed emotions strain relationships because others feel the heat of your reactions without understanding the hidden source. They harm health, as chronic stress manifests physically. They block growth because you cannot transform what you refuse to face. So how do you begin to release what you've buried? Step 1 is awareness. Start noticing your triggers. When do you overreact? What situations make you irrationally anxious or defensive? These are clues pointing toward repressed material. Step 2 is expression. Once you identify an emotion, find safe ways to let it out. Write in a journal. Speak honestly with a trusted friend. Create art, play music, or move your body to channel the feeling. Expression doesn't mean lashing out. It means giving your inner life a voice before it bursts uncontrollably. Step 3 is mindfulness. Learn to sit with emotions as they arise, rather than immediately suppressing them. When sadness or anger appears, instead of pushing it down, breathe into it. Notice where it lives in your body. Let it exist without judgment. This practice slowly teaches your mind that feelings are not enemies, but messengers. Sometimes professional support is essential. Therapists provide tools to gently uncover and process repressed material. There is no shame in this. Seeking guidance is courage, not weakness. And what about dealing with repression in others? Patience and compassion are key. When someone reacts in ways that seem irrational, remember they may be fighting ghosts you cannot see. Instead of escalating, hold space. Offer empathy, but protect your own boundaries too. You cannot heal another's repression for them. You can only create an environment where they feel safe enough to begin. Imagine how your life might change if repression loosened its grip. Instead of sudden outbursts, you'd experience steady calm. Instead of unexplained anxiety, you'd feel clarity. Instead of relationships marked by confusion, you'd foster intimacy grounded in honesty. Here's a simple practice. Each evening, ask yourself, what did I feel today that I didn't express? Write the answer. Over time, patterns emerge. You'll begin to see the emotions you habitually push down. Naming them daily weakens repression's power. Remember this: emotions are not meant to be buried. They are meant to be lived, felt, and learned from. When you deny them, you deny part of yourself. But when you face them, even the painful ones, you reclaim energy once wasted on hiding. Repression may have protected you once, but you are no longer that child who needed armor. Now, your strength lies in facing what you once feared. Every time you acknowledge a hidden feeling, you take another step toward wholeness. And wholeness is freedom. The freedom to live fully, without the weight of unspoken truths dragging you down. Envy is a quiet poison. It slips in when you scroll through pictures of someone's vacation, when you hear about a colleague's promotion, when you notice a friend's happiness glowing brighter than your own. You don't announce it. You may not even admit it. But deep inside, a restless ache whispers, "Why them? Why not me?" Unlike admiration, which can inspire you to rise higher, envy festers. It corrodes joy, distorts perspective, and can even turn love into resentment. Why does envy strike so hard? At its root, it is about comparison. You measure yourself not against who you were yesterday, but against whoever shines brightest around you today. It's not enough to succeed. You crave to succeed more than others. And in a world where success is constantly displayed online, the triggers multiply endlessly. Think about the last time envy gripped you. Maybe you smiled outwardly, congratulated politely, but inside felt the sting. That sting doesn't just hurt, it distracts. Instead of focusing on your path, you waste energy watching theirs. Instead of celebrating your progress, you discount it because someone else seems further ahead. Envy often disguises itself. It may appear as gossip, cutting someone down behind their back. It may show up as passive-aggressive remarks, or as ostentatious displays meant to provoke envy in others. Sometimes, it even masquerades as ambition, driving you to chase achievements not because you want them, but because you can't stand others having what you don't. The damage is real. Envy breeds unhappiness, because no matter what you gain, someone else will always have more. It strains relationships, planting subtle hostility where love or friendship once lived, and it sabotages growth, because energy spent resenting others cannot be invested in building yourself. But envy also holds a strange gift if you choose to see it. It points to your deepest desires. The things that trigger envy often reveal the values you care about most. If you envy a friend's career success, perhaps achievement matters deeply to you. If you envy another's confidence, perhaps you long to express yourself more fully. When you use envy as a mirror instead of a weapon, it becomes a guide. How do you transform it? Begin with honesty. Admit to yourself, I feel envy. Most people bury it in shame, but naming it weakens its power. Next, practice gratitude. List what you already have, even the small things, and feel the abundance of your own life. Gratitude doesn't erase desire, but it softens comparison. Then, reframe envy into admiration. Instead of thinking, I hate them for having it, ask, what can I learn from them? Let their success be proof of possibility, evidence that the goal is achievable. This shift turns bitterness into inspiration. Also, invest in self-improvement. The more you pour energy into your own growth, the less bandwidth envy has. Progress, no matter how small, nourishes you more than resentment ever could. Finally, practice generosity. Celebrate others genuinely. Compliment their success. Support their growth. At first, it may feel forced, but over time, generosity rewires your perspective. You discover that lifting others doesn't diminish you, it strengthens you. Beware, too, of envious people around you. Their negativity can seep into your life. Protect yourself by recognizing the signs: sarcasm, backhanded compliments, constant comparisons. Keep empathy, but also boundaries. Don't let their poison infect your clarity. Ask yourself, how would your life feel if envy no longer ruled you? Imagine the relief of focusing fully on your journey, free from the distraction of other people's victories. Imagine the joy of turning envy into a compass, guiding you toward your own deepest desires. The truth is, envy will always flicker. You are human. But each time you catch it, reframe it, and redirect it, you reclaim energy that once went to resentment and pour it into creation. Over time, envy shifts from poison to teacher, showing you not what to resent, but what to pursue. So the next time envy rises, don't deny it and don't indulge it. Face it. Thank it for revealing what you care about. Then step back onto your own path. Eyes forward, heart steady. That is how you transform envy from a corrosive weight into a quiet force for growth. There's a voice inside you that sometimes whispers, "You're destined for more than everyone else. You're different. You're superior." At first, it feels like motivation, a spark of ambition pushing you to excel. But if that voice swells unchecked, it becomes grandiosity, an inflated sense of importance that blinds you to reality. It convinces you that your talent, your ideas, your very presence are larger than life, that normal rules don't apply. And while a touch of confidence is essential, grandiosity tilts you into dangerous territory, where arrogance replaces humility and fantasy clouds judgment. Grandiosity often takes root in childhood. Maybe you were endlessly praised, told you were exceptional, special, chosen. Or maybe the opposite. You felt small, overlooked, and grandiose fantasies became armor against feelings of insignificance. Either way, the result is the same: an inner belief that you are meant to tower above. On the surface, it looks like boldness. You take risks others avoid. You radiate certainty. You charm with vision. But beneath lies fragility. The grandiose self must constantly be fed with admiration, or else insecurity creeps back in. When success arrives, you feel invincible. When failure strikes, the crash is devastating. Think of the person who exaggerates their achievements, not just to impress others, but to convince themselves. Or the leader who dismisses all criticism as ignorance, refusing to see flaws in their plan. Or the friend who monopolizes conversations, unable to hear others because they're too busy broadcasting their own greatness. These are not signs of true strength. They're defenses built on shaky ground. Grandiosity carries heavy costs. It alienates others because arrogance repels trust. It leads to reckless decisions because overconfidence blinds you to risks. It creates emotional instability as the gap between inflated self-image and reality widens. And it traps you in a cycle. The more you cling to superiority, the harder it becomes to connect with others authentically. But here's the paradox. Grandiosity isn't entirely bad. The belief that you can achieve greatness has fueled discoveries, art, revolutions. Many visionaries had sparks of it. The danger lies in imbalance, in letting the belief inflate beyond truth. What begins as confidence can quickly rot into delusion. So how do you keep ambition without tipping into grandiosity? The first step is grounded realism. Acknowledge your talents honestly, but also admit your limitations. Celebrate achievements, but remind yourself of the work and help that made them possible. Second, practice humility. This doesn't mean downplaying your gifts. It means recognizing that you are part of a larger whole. Others contribute, others shine, and their brilliance doesn't dim yours. A humble mindset protects you from the loneliness of inflated pride. Third, cultivate empathy. When you listen deeply to others, when you genuinely consider their feelings and perspectives, you balance the self-centeredness of grandiosity. Empathy pulls you out of your head and anchors you in shared humanity. Fourth, embrace continuous learning. The grandiose self says, "I already know." The wise self says, "There is always more to learn." By adopting a student's mindset, you keep ego in check and growth alive. History offers cautionary tales. Leaders who believed themselves untouchable often fell hardest, undone by arrogance. Yet those who combined ambition with humility, who dreamed big but stayed grounded, created legacies that endured. In your own life, grandiosity may appear subtly. Notice when you dismiss advice too quickly, when you crave admiration excessively, when you exaggerate stories to seem larger. These are signals. Instead of shaming yourself, use them as reminders to return to balance. Try this practice. At the end of each week, write down 3 things you're proud of and 3 things you could improve. This exercise grounds you, celebrating strengths without ignoring weaknesses. It teaches you that self-worth is not about perfection or superiority, but about honesty. Ask yourself, what would it feel like to live without the burden of needing to be extraordinary? To chase goals because they matter to you, not because they prove you're better than others. That shift frees you. You no longer ride the roller coaster of inflated highs and crushing lows. You walk steadily, eyes open. Grandiosity will always try to seduce you. But when you learn to hold ambition in one hand and humility in the other, you find true power, not the fragile power of inflated ego, but the steady power of a grounded self, confident, capable, and connected to reality. So let your vision be bold, yes, but let your feet stay on the ground. Let your heart stay open to others. And let your hunger for greatness be matched by a hunger for truth. That is how you transform grandiosity from a trap into a tool, a force that drives you forward without pulling you away from the world around you. From the moment you were born, the world handed you a script. If you were a boy, you were told to be tough, stoic, assertive. If you were a girl, you were told to be gentle, nurturing, accommodating. These instructions might not have been spoken outright, but they were everywhere, in toys, in movies, in family expectations, in the subtle ways adults praised or corrected you. This is gender rigidity, the invisible cage of stereotypes that dictates how men and women should act, limiting the full spectrum of human expression. On the surface, these roles seem natural, even harmless. Men fix things, women comfort, men lead, women support, but peel back the layers, and you see how much potential is stifled by this rigidity. A man discouraged from showing vulnerability grows distant from his own emotions, struggling with intimacy. A woman discouraged from being assertive hesitates to lead, even when she has the vision and strength. These limitations don't just shrink individuals, they shrink families, workplaces, societies. Gender rigidity has deep roots. In ancient times, survival often required strict division of labor. Hunters and gatherers, protectors and nurturers. Over centuries, these roles hardened into tradition, then into culture, and finally into unspoken rules. But the world has changed. Today, survival is no longer tied to those old divisions, yet the rigid scripts remain, outdated but powerful. You see it in workplaces where men who show emotion are judged as weak, while women who show authority are judged as harsh. You see it in relationships where men feel pressured to always provide, even at the cost of their well-being, and women feel pressured to always please, even at the cost of their truth. You see it in children told to man up or to act like a lady before they even understand what those phrases mean. The damage runs deep. Suppressed emotions lead to anxiety, depression, even illness. Suppressed ambitions lead to regret and resentment. Relationships buckle under the weight of unspoken expectations, and society loses the creativity, innovation, and empathy that flourish when people are free to bring their whole selves forward. But the story doesn't have to end there. You can break the script. You can embrace the full range of traits within you: strength and softness, logic and intuition, ambition and compassion. These are not opposites, they are complements. The more you integrate them, the more fully human you become. Imagine a man who is both strong in crisis and gentle in love. Imagine a woman who is both nurturing in friendship and fierce in leadership. Imagine yourself allowed to be both vulnerable and powerful, both decisive and tender. That is freedom. The freedom gender rigidity tries to deny. To move toward this freedom, start with self-reflection. Ask, which parts of myself have I suppressed because they didn't fit the role I was handed? Where have I silenced emotion, ambition, or softness to fit in? Awareness is the first crack in the cage. Then, experiment with embracing opposite traits. If you've been taught to hide vulnerability, practice opening up in safe spaces. If you've been taught to avoid authority, practice speaking firmly and leading. Each time you step outside the script, you reclaim a part of yourself. Seek role models who break molds. Notice leaders, artists, and everyday people who embody both masculine and feminine qualities with ease. Let their example remind you that you too can live beyond stereotypes. And don't forget, supporting others in breaking free matters just as much. Encourage your friends, children, or partners when they step outside rigid roles. Create environments where it's safe for men to cry, for women to lead, for everyone to explore the full spectrum of human possibility. History offers examples of those who defied gender rigidity. Writers, leaders, creators who refused to be boxed in. Their courage opened doors, not just for themselves, but for generations after. Every time you defy a stereotype, you add to that legacy. The truth is, gender rigidity robs us all. It robs men of tenderness, women of power, children of wholeness. But when you break free, you don't just liberate yourself. You expand the world's understanding of what it means to be human. So ask yourself, what part of you have you hidden away to fit the script? And what would happen if you let it out? The answer might terrify you at first, but it also holds the key to a richer, more authentic life. Remember, balance is not weakness, it's strength. Embracing both sides of yourself doesn't dilute you, it makes you complete. And when enough people begin to live this way, society itself shifts toward inclusivity, toward empathy, toward possibility. Breaking gender rigidity is not about rejecting tradition entirely. It's about expanding beyond it. It's about saying, I am more than one role, more than one stereotype, more than one expectation. It's about writing your own script, one that reflects the fullness of who you are. Life without direction is like a ship drifting without a compass. You move, you float, but you never truly arrive. This is the danger of aimlessness, the hollow sense that you're moving through days without a deeper anchor. You wake, you work, you rest, and yet a question lingers. For what? Without a clear sense of purpose, even success feels strangely empty, and setbacks feel unbearable. Aimlessness isn't always obvious. You may appear busy, chasing tasks, climbing ladders, filling calendars. But busyness is not the same as purpose. You can achieve much and still feel unsatisfied if your actions don't align with meaning. This is why people who reach milestones, graduations, promotions, marriages, sometimes feel unexpectedly lost afterward. The goal gave direction, but once achieved, the compass vanishes. The consequences of aimlessness ripple through your life. Motivation fades, procrastination creeps in, and outside voices begin to steer you. Without purpose, you're more vulnerable to conformity, absorbing the values of the group around you, surrendering individuality for belonging. You nod along with popular opinion, even when it clashes with your truth. You follow trends, join crowds, adopt beliefs not because they're yours, but because it feels easier than standing alone. Conformity is comfortable, but it carries a hidden cost, the erosion of authenticity. When you constantly match the group, you risk forgetting your own voice. This explains why people often wake up in midlife with the unsettling realization that they've been living someone else's story, pursuing careers, relationships, or lifestyles they never truly wanted, but conformed into accepting. And beyond conformity lies fickleness, the unstable tendency to change loyalties, interests, and goals without grounding. When you lack a compass, you're easily swayed by novelty. A new idea, a new job, a new relationship sparks excitement, but the thrill fades, and you move on again. This cycle leaves trails of half-built projects and unfulfilled commitments. It breeds instability, eroding trust others place in you and weakening your own confidence. Aggression, too, emerges when purpose is absent. Without direction, energy twists inward and outward in destructive ways. Anger becomes a default response, a way to feel powerful when deeper meaning is missing. Some channel aggression into domination, while others let it leak in subtle sabotage. Yet beneath both lies the same emptiness, energy with no constructive outlet. Generational myopia compounds the problem. Each generation believes its worldview is ultimate, dismissing the lessons of those before and the questions of those after. This short-sightedness breeds conflict, as youth see elders as outdated and elders see youth as reckless. Without a bridge, wisdom is lost and mistakes repeat. Aimlessness thrives when you're blind to the larger sweep of human experience, when you see only through your own narrow lens. And perhaps the deepest root of aimlessness is death denial. You push aside thoughts of mortality, distracting yourself with comfort or ambition, pretending time is infinite. But in denying death, you also deny urgency. You drift, as though tomorrow is guaranteed, never confronting the truth that your days are numbered. This denial feels safe, but it robs you of intensity and focus. When you forget that life is finite, you lose the fire to live fully. So how do you break free? It begins with self-reflection. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? Beyond approval, beyond comparison. Sit with this question, even if the answer feels unclear. The act of asking plants a seed. Next, set direction. Define a purpose, not necessarily grand, but personal and real. It might be to create, to serve, to build, to nurture. Let this purpose guide your choices, filtering distractions and grounding your path. Practice courage in resisting conformity. Stand by your values, even when they clash with the crowd. Express your perspective with respect, but with firmness. Each time you hold your ground, your voice grows stronger. Anchor yourself against fickleness by committing. Choose a few pursuits deeply aligned with your purpose and stay with them, even when excitement wanes. True fulfillment often comes not from novelty, but from depth. Channel aggression into constructive force. Use it to fuel your workouts, your art, your mission. Energy itself is not the problem. Misdirected energy is. When purpose directs aggression, it becomes drive. Bridge the generational divide by listening. Seek wisdom from those older. Share insights with those younger. Expand your lens beyond your own era. The broader your perspective, the harder it is to drift into short-sightedness. Finally, confront mortality. instead of avoiding the thought of death. Let it sharpen your appreciation of life. Each moment becomes more vivid when you realize it won't last forever. Death awareness is not morbid. It's motivating. It urges you to spend your limited time with intention. Imagine living with purpose as your compass, authenticity as your shield, depth as your pursuit, empathy as your bridge, and mortality as your reminder. In that life, aimlessness dissolves. Every choice, every step carries weight because you know why you're walking. So take a breath and ask yourself now, are you drifting or are you steering? The answer may shape not only the rest of your days, but the legacy you leave behind. As we close this journey through the laws of human nature, pause and notice how far you've traveled. You've looked honestly at irrational impulses, narcissistic pulls, hidden masks, compulsive cycles, restless desires, short-sighted temptations, defensive armor, the traps of self-sabotage, buried emotions, corrosive envy, inflated grandiosity, rigid roles, and the dangers of drifting without purpose. Each law revealed a mirror, showing not only the weaknesses of others but the tendencies alive in yourself. And in seeing them, you gained the power to shift them. The message is not that you must become perfect. Perfection is illusion. The message is that awareness transforms. When you recognize irrationality, you can pause. When you see narcissism, you can choose empathy. When you notice envy, you can turn it into inspiration. Each law becomes not a prison, but a pathway, guiding you toward greater clarity and freedom. And woven through all of it is this truth: life is short. Denying death numbs you, but facing it fuels you. Every law matters because time is precious. You cannot afford to live blindly, bound by old wounds or social scripts. You owe yourself more. So let these lessons settle into you. Carry them into your choices, your relationships, your dreams. Let them sharpen your awareness, deepen your empathy, steady your ambition. And above all, let them remind you that growth is always possible, that by mastering the laws of human nature, you master not just survival, but a richer way of living. Keep exploring yourself. Keep expanding your humanity. The work never ends, and that's the beauty of it.